Last week, Funcom announced the PC release date for Dune Awakening, alongside details of pre-orders, character creation and more. All this news came with a new trailer, and now the dust has settled a little on the initial hype on the launch day announcement. I thought we'd take a look at the hidden details contained in the trailer. There's a lot to cover, so let's get into it. The intro sequence has a couple of very strange shots. Firstly, this whole sequence of floating bodies, the Reverend Mother and a giant Muad'Dib. This is all quite surreal, and based on something you'll see later in the trailer, I think these may be part of a spice vision. Next, pretty easy to spot, it looks like quicksand will be an environmental hazard to be wary of. In the background of this shot, you can see what looks like a wreck of some sort. It's quite similar to a section of the Dune Awakening gameplay I showed you a couple of weeks back, so it's potentially a POI akin to a dungeon. Sandstorms also seem to carry lightning with them. Apparently sandstorms in real life can actually produce lightning, which is a nice visual touch. You also get a decent look at what I presume are the Sardaukar ships here. They've been seen in other trailers, but it looks like they're scanning the sand for something. Here we get a good look at some of the clothing. The passenger seems to be wearing a still suit, whereas both of the drivers of the bikes are dressed completely differently. Additionally, the driver's armour in the foreground is pretty colourful, which I think will add a nice splash and break of colour into an overwhelmingly warm desert setting. This sequence shows off a grappling hook and the suspensor tech, but also in the sky you can see what I think is a Highliner spaceship, similar to the models from the recent Dune movies. Throughout the trailer we get a look at multiple building sets. We've seen some of these before that seem to be styled after the Atreides, but this shot in particular seems to show two sets or variants of a similar style. You also get another look at the Atreides set later on. It's also notable that there's a fair bit of plant life in this shot, so perhaps not everywhere will just be arid sand and rock. The ornithopter shot just afterwards almost makes it seem like this section is set in the mountains. On that topic, these shots seem to show an Atreides base, maybe a large NPC camp or a social hub, complete with Atreides themed ornithopters and marching soldiers. This sequence has two interesting things, even though it doesn't look like a lot. The first, on the left, is a strange symbol in the rocks. It looks a bit like a sandworm mouth based on a similar design later in the trailer. There also seems to be some sort of turbo attached to this sandbike, which wasn't on some of the scenes with previous sandbikes. This shot showcases a huge ravine. That drop seems almost endless. Hopefully this is something we can actually explore, because just the scale and size of that compared to the sandbikes looks crazy. Here we can see what appears to be either a Harkonnen building set or an NPC camp. It also looks like there are going to be NPC camps in the tall rocks around the map. Hopefully this is the case. I think it would add a really great element of verticality, especially because we've seen other tech like suspensors, grappling hooks and so on. This shot shows some vehicles I don't think we've seen before. I'm not sure if they're spice harvesters or something similar, though I'd personally wager a bet on harvesters, seeing as, well, they are driving towards what seems to be 3 spice blows. This weapon here seems to be a slow pellet projectile weapon capable of piercing shields. According to the Dune wiki, these weapons do exist in universe, and the delayed red effect on the enemy's shield seems to imply that it's kind of digging through the shield. We get a decent look at some other armour sets here. The one on the right is a Harkonnen set based on the symbol on the back. It's hard to identify any house affiliation on the left and centre, but you can also see a couple of different weapons here, what looks like a rifle on the right and perhaps that slow pellet weapon on the back of the main character. Here we get a good look at multiple ornithopter variants alongside sandbikes, what seems to be some sort of ATV or buggy, and that vehicle that again seems to be a spice harvester. A later shot also shows ornithopters with rockets bombarding an area. That same bombarding sequence also has a Harkonnen site in the background. It's hard to say again if this is a base or a camp, but if players can build with that building set, it'll be a big win for the architecture enthusiasts. There's a brief look here of what appears to be a Fremen religious site, which then leads into shots of what I assume are spice visions or dreams. This ties in with one of the first things in this trailer. The design of these sections seems kind of wild. I'm interested to see a lot more of these, and the voiceover seems to imply we might learn something from these interactions too. This is really quite obvious, but the blue eyes are clear evidence of spice addiction. Spice is undoubtedly going to be a big thing in the game, so hopefully this indicates players can use and, more importantly, benefit from spice. This shot seems to show a sort of suspension or anti-gravity grenade used to immobilise enemies. This shot's only short, but the sandbike being driven here is a pretty stark green, vastly different from the other white sandbikes we've seen thus far, so we may be able to customise our own vehicles. This sequence seems to show the player character deflecting darts with his sword. You can actually see the sparks from the darts hitting the sword itself. Hopefully this is accurate. It'd be a really good way to make melee more viable against ranged opponents. Here we get a good look at some other really nice armours. There's been a really good variety in this trailer, so hopefully there should be tons of armours and still suits in the game. Flamethrowers. Burning under the desert sun will probably be the least of your concerns if you're facing this weapon. Finally, we get a really good look at what seems to be an Atreides building set, which looks really nice. And there we have it, all the details that I've managed to pick out of the new Dune Awakening release trailer. I picked through this as finely as I could, but I suspect there might be a couple more things in there that I didn't see. Do let me know if you saw anything that I didn't. If you haven't already heard, Dune Awakening is releasing on May 20th, 2025, so not too long to wait until we can dodge sandworms and harvest that precious spice. For more details about release, pre-orders, the free character creator and more, check out the video linked in the top right that has all the info you need. As always, make sure you subscribe for all the Dune news, gameplay and guides when the game comes out, alongside my usual Conan Exiles content too. Thanks for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. If you want to support the channel yourself, check out the Patreon through the link in the description, or join here as a member on YouTube by clicking join just below this video. Take care, and I'll see you soon.